Hey guys, welcome back to another review here. We're going to be reviewing the first half of season 2 of My Hero Academia. I just finished watching the 25th episode here. So Todoroki versus Bakugu. Bakugo? I don't know. I've watched a lot of these episodes now, and I still don't know how to pronounce some of the names. But so they kind of just continued the episode thing here because it is just a story of how Deku got to be the best hero of all time. It sounds like in the world. So it starts. The first episode of season 2 is just episode 14 because we left off with episode 13. So it just kind of continues from there. And you go through, and so I effectively watched about 11 or 12 episodes because 14 to 25, yeah, so 12. And then it goes up to episode 38, so there's 25 episodes total, so I'm basically halfway there. But this whole first half was essentially like it goes in, and the first episode is them getting ready for this competition, this sports championship, which it sounds like the Olympics have kind of died out, like it's still happening, but just for normal people. But a lot more people tune into this UA Sports Festival, which is basically the Olympics for these quirk users at UA. So it's like the best of the best, or the future best of the best, and it's split into the 3 years. So year 1, year 2, year 3. Obviously, Deku and Class 1A is all year 1 students right now. So that's kind of there. And yeah, so it kind of, I don't know, it just kind of starts off, and it's pretty interesting. It's weird because Eraserhead just kind of walks in. Like, I know in the last review I was saying, like, it sounds like he's going to be decimated and like his eyes might be messed up or something, but it's actually kind of funny because everything on him was bandaged up except for his eyes. Like, his eyes worked fine, and his mouth and everything obviously too. So it's like he was talking and he was teaching them, and he was telling them about this. Honestly, though, just to get it out of the way real quick, this first half of the season, obviously I don't know what's about to happen. They're alluding to stuff that's gonna come up in the next half of the season, but is phenomenal. Like, this is, I didn't think, like, obviously it kind of starts off, and I was told it started off slow in the first season, and it just goes so fast going on. But I thought that just meant for the first season, that's how it's structured. But no, it kicks off in this, just starting from the first episode of this season 2 here, with that's the idea, Ochako, which is the 14th episode, the one that they start off with. But yeah, so essentially you get, what I love about this is that they somehow make it so action packed, but at the same time give you so much lore and backstory into some of the characters that I was personally most interested in. And for me also, Deku in this season so far is much more tolerable than in the first season. Like, he was still really cool and everything, I guess, but he's definitely gained a lot more confidence with his abilities and with what he can do and how he can help people going into this season. And so that was really awesome to see, because now he's definitely become one of my favorites, whereas first I would have probably put more people above him. But they give you kind of the kind of some more info about Todoroki, who is the kind of half ice, half fire guy, which I didn't know he could use fire. I thought that was just like kind of a, like, he can melt his ice. But no, this guy is like, he's the son of the second most powerful super at the time, the superheroes at the time, called Endeavor, who is just like all fire. And Endeavor essentially wants to raise Todoroki to take over All Might's power, which is, All Might is currently mentoring Deku to take over his mantle. So there's automatically a conflict between Todoroki and Deku right there. Even though at the end of this episode that I just watched, episode 25 here, which is Todoroki versus Bakugu, who is, they're the finalists here. So Todoroki actually does end up beating Deku in the episode Shoto Todoroki Origin, which is a funny kind of play because the first ever episode of the show is called Origin, but it's Origin for Deku. So it's showing you that now this guy, his kind of main competition here, it's his origin story time, and he ends up winning that fight, just like how Deku kind of started getting his powers in that first episode from All Might. But it is pretty awesome, and honestly, that episode, Shodoro, Todoroki origin there is probably one of my favorite episodes, hands down. Especially, definitely in this season. I think just throughout everything I've watched so far, that might be my favorite episode. Todoroki versus Bakugu was really awesome too, and it kind of showed the descent of Bakugo. And how it was kind of, it's interesting, his character, because it's so obvious that he wants to be the best, which is something that's been played out throughout this whole series so far, but he just can't stand to think that someone might have let him win, that they weren't taking it at their all. Like he can't live with the fact, like the idea that maybe if they had tried differently or they tried harder, they could have defeated me. So I'm not actually as powerful as them. They let me win, which is you can see it breaking him a bit, especially in that episode where they literally have him restrained as he's accepting his first place medal from All Might. But the reason this sports festival is so important is because they get scouted for careers as heroes and sidekicks in the future. And this is also, they kind of bring the whole school together, so you get to meet the different aspects of the school. You have the heroes, you have class 1A, 1A, 1B, which class 1B was pretty pissed at 1A because they were getting all this recognition for fighting actual villains. So you have those two classes. And then you have the sidekicks, essentially the support group, which some of them make like weapons. Some of them are just maybe supers that didn't get in. Then you have like the general studies, which those guys are, some of those guys are pretty insane, but for the most part, they're just random people like studying at the school, this is probably where Deku would have been, is in more of this general studies area if he had not gotten into the Hero Academy. So it's kind of interesting because there is a character there, which I'll get to in a minute, that is like so parallel to him. It's insane. Like, and he feels bad for him when he defeats him eventually. When Deku defeats him eventually. And then you have the business class as well, which they're kind of just there. They're not doing too much. But the thing that they kind of list in this is that you can essentially, if you beat one of these people, then you can essentially take over, I guess, is maybe like a... You don't take over, like, let's say, so there's this guy from general education, one of the general education students called Hitoshi Shinso, and he essentially has brainwashing powers, but so he failed the hero testing for the preliminary test, which Deku, that's when he like throws his first punch and like breaks all his like limbs basically and like crashes down to the earth. And then that's the physical testing to get into the hero classes. Shinso obviously failed at that because his abilities are mind control, so you can't really mind control a robot, because how it works is that someone has to answer a question and then he can decide to mind control them or not. He asks a random question, and if they answer him, he can take control of their mind. And so Deku, his questions, just trying to like defend his friend, and then Shinso takes control of his mind and pushes him so he almost falls out of the edge of the arena. And then Deku sees this like form, and it reminded me of the avatars in Avatar: The Last Airbender. It reminds me of kind of that thing where it sounds like he sees the past lives of the people that controlled the One for All power, and they essentially snap him out of it by like taking control of him and like using the One for All power, which hurts him and then snaps him out of the mind control to the Avatar universe, which is another one of my... Like, I love that show. That's one of my all-time favorite shows. The original Avatar, Legend of Korra, was aight, but the original Avatar is one of my all-time favorite shows. And it's interesting seeing that parallel between the Avatar state power and then this One for All power, where they kind of somewhat see... In the Avatar power, though, it sounds different because they're seeking guidance from past Avatars. This one, he wasn't seeking guidance, but they somehow, like... He just saw them in their past lives, and it kind of allowed them to take control of him for a second and like use his power. It's kind of weird, and honestly, All Might didn't have an answer for him. He's just like, I don't know what that's about. But we do learn in this first half of the season that All Might used to be quirkless, just like Deku, and perhaps that's actually why he chose him, because I was under the impression that All Might had like some strength quirk or something, and then he contributed to it. Because Deku actually tells him basically that you should choose someone else, you shouldn't choose me, after Deku loses to Todoroki. He's saying that I'm not worthy of this. Like, you should essentially choose someone else to do it, to like have this power. And All Might's like, that's true. If I chose someone with a quirk, they would add to the power. And like if you chose Todoroki, he could basically be unstoppable. No one could defeat him as a superhero. But he's like, that's not what I choose to do. That's not who I choose to pass it on to. I'm choosing you. I believe in you. You will be the best. So it's quite interesting, because that develops more of a connection between All Might, who you see as this kind of like, who everyone else sees at least as this like unstoppable force, and like he knows everything. He's so wise. And it develops that connection in parallel to Deku, and like showing that Deku could actually be like All Might, if not better than All Might, ultimately. Because it doesn't seem like Deku cares about fame or money. He legitimately just cares about helping people. But his one of his good friends, Ochako, she obviously, so she says like, the reason I'm doing this is for money. She wants to be able to provide a life for her family and like help them out, because she's worried about her father's construction company going under. And it's interesting because they frame it as like she just cares about money, but then she explains that it's a noble like caring, like she cares about the money because it will help her family. And you don't get too much more into is her name the frog girl. You don't get too much more into her, which I was fine with. What you do get more into, which was pretty cool, is Alero, who's the guy that can turn into rock, and he's pretty cool. Like I actually do really like his character. It seems like him and Bakugo are developing some sort of like friendly rivalry there, which is really awesome. Momo, you also see her kind of, she was one of the other people that were like recommended and got in, just like Shoto, and she was also seems to be very powerful with her quirk of creation. And you also do see her kind of failing almost immediately against Tokiyami, which is one of the most powerful people in here by far. But yeah, you see her kind of fail to him, and he doesn't want to hurt her. He kind of just hits her out with her shield, but in the fight that they have. But it was interesting to see that defeat on her face, and like being like, wow, I actually like I lost this early. But yeah, getting to Tokiyami, who's the Raven guy, the bird guy, I thought this guy was going to be pretty lame in his powers, but he's one of the coolest, and they go to depths in explaining his powers in which episode is it here? I believe episode 17, strategy, and then it goes into episode 18 as well, cavalry battle final. In those two episodes, they go into detail about Tokiyami's Raven dark power and how it works, and it's pretty cool. Like, and it has the disadvantage where if it's sun out or if it's light out, it can hurt him. So the matchup, he goes against Bakugo, and that's a pretty bad match for him because Bakugo thrives on the heat and the sun. Same when they're actually in the battle cavalry field, when he goes against Denki, who is the guy that can shoot electricity. That's another bad matchup for him because he gets Denki kind of uses that energy, which is Tokiyami would need the darkness and everything to enhance his power, so it's hard for him to actually attack. He can do defensive maneuvers for a limited time when the sun's out, but when the night's out, he's so much more aggressive, and he can go at it. They don't actually ever show that, but that's what he's saying the ability is. So it is unfortunate that he ends up losing to Bakugo pretty handedly, but his powers are so cool, and I can't wait to see what they do with him, because there's a lot of cool things they could do. Mina, I didn't know that she apparently throws acid, or not throws acid, but like can touch people and put acid on them. I didn't know that, so that was pretty cool to learn. But yeah, you just kind of have a lot of these characters here that overall you got to see more of their abilities. It was really... What I love about this first half is that they show all the unique ways that the quirks could work. And ultimately what this first... Like, I've watched... So this was 13 episodes. This was 12 episodes for this first half of the season. And honestly, it was really cool. And all it was a tournament. That's all 12 of these episodes. The 12 of these episodes were essentially just a massive like festival, a sports championship, a tournament of 1-to-1 fights. But you learn so much about the lore of the characters and the world and how everything works, and you get the backstory to that, like with the lore. And then you see the fightings and the pairings, and you see Deku actually strategizing and his notes becoming useful to him and like to his abilities. And he just grows so much as a character. Same as Shoto, which was one of my favorites. Even though I didn't know too much about him, he was really interesting to me in the last like couple episodes of the first season. So it was really cool to kind of see him, and he really takes up this. There's this three-way of rivalry really between Shoto, Deku, and Bakugo. And Tenya is also thrown in there, where he's a friendly rival to Deku because he wants to prove that he's better than Deku, so he kind of gets the notoriety and everything as well, to like bring like honor to his family essentially. And that's really awesome to see that friendly rivalry there. And even Ochako kind of follows Tenya's lead and does that friendly, like, we're still friends, Deku, and everything. Like, you're like one of my best friends kind of thing. But I don't want your help in this scenario because I want to know that I could win on my own. And they go to great lengths. She almost beats Bakugo. Like, he does handedly kind of win the end, but her strategy was really impressive, and I did not think that's what was going to happen there. But it was pretty cool to see when all the rocks are falling and then Bakugu just explodes it, and then Bakugu starts realizing that even his powers have limits, and then that brings to realization that everyone's power has limits, and he thinks that from maybe an egotistical and also scientific standpoint, where it's like the quirks that we find out are more like physical manifestation. So it's like if you go and you're in baseball and you throw fast pitches every single pitch in like 96 games, you're going to throw out your shoulder almost probably after like 20 games or something like that, not even. But if you kind of throw it for 5 games, take a rest for 5, throw for 5, you're going to be better because you have the physical time to rest. It's the exact same thing with quirks, where if you go all out at 100% like All Might was doing, then you're going to reduce your long-term ability, which Deku actually does do. He overextends himself and essentially shatters his bones in his right hand, and that's forever damaged. It sounds like, just like how All Might really hurt himself, or he got hurt, but that's why he can't heal, and that's why All Might only has like 50 minutes to an hour and a half now instead of the 3 hours he used to. And before that, it sounded like he could just stay in that form as long as he wants. But it's cool to kind of see the even further hampering of the powers, where it's like they need time to rest and like reconcile them and like get back into the fight. So they start establishing more of the limits here as well, that these quirks do have. But overall, I think a lot of these characters are really solid. I liked the couple characters we met from Class 1B. There was quite a few we met, but the two standouts was Ibarra, who's the vine hair lady, she was pretty awesome. You also met Kendo, who's the just orange hair girl. I don't actually really know what her powers was, but she was trying to be friendly with the Class 1A. You meet more of these, but the other one I believe is Tetasu. I can't pronounce his name. It's the steel guy who fights Alario, and they just end up in a draw, and then Alario beats him in the like breaking of the draw. But yeah, anyway, I know I just basically listed through the characters, but that's all really this first half of the season was them demonstrating their powers to us more, getting more backstory on some of our favorites here and there. Again, like I said, if Yuga and Mineta were out of this would have been like an amazing first half. Like, it still was. They didn't hamper it too much, but it's just one of those things that I always hated when I saw them on screen. They're just really annoying and creepy and weird. But yeah, that's kind of all I got to say about this. I know I just went over characters like I was saying, and really like some things. Like, you get to know more about like Shoto and his mom and their backstory, and at the end of the episode I just watched, episode 25 here, you see him go into the hospital where his mom is, and like obviously he's trying to reconcile that, it sounds like, or like kind of come to some kind of closure for himself, because you got to remember these guys are only 15, 16 years old, all these people, which is pretty insane, but they are. And so he's trying to reconcile that fact so he can get some emotional closure, because Shoto actually only uses his ice, which is what Bakugo was so infuriated by, which is why I went into that little rant about Bakugo and how he wants to know that he beat someone on their best terms, is because and it's kind of like what Deku wanted. Deku was trying to break down the walls for Shoto, so like he would realize that he could use all of his power, his fire and his ice, and still be a good person, and still be a good hero, and not end up like his father. Because this is really like he doesn't like his father, because it sounds like his father obviously like beat his mother, beat him. His father sent his mom to the hospital, and she's still there long term. In his father's mind, it was to protect Shoto and his creation, not really Shoto, but his creation, his legacy. Obviously, that's not really what happened. I don't exactly know how the tea got spilled on Shoto, but it it kind of has his like mom. It's alluding to like his mom like purposely like threw the tea on his face to like keep him quiet or something like that. I don't know, but hopefully that's not what happened. Hopefully it was like an accident, but is what it is. I do feel really bad for the kid though. He's he's definitely gone through a lot, and Deku obviously recognizes that too. And that brain control guy, the Shinso, is another. I like his addition. I thought it would be like a really weird addition, but when him and Deku fight, it's really cool to see like to hear his backstory and hear like how he thinks Deku was like given this great power and he was born with everything and this is how it is. In reality, Deku is exactly like Shinso, like not even a year ago. Or no, about a year ago at this point, he was exactly like Shinso, except he was quirkless and he didn't know anyone. He didn't have any friends. And then because someone took a shot on him, now he has all this and he's doing great for himself. And I really can't see where they go. I really can't wait to see where they go with these characters, and especially with Tenya, I think it will be really interesting. I almost feel like he's gonna have some sort of darkness to him maybe in a couple seasons here, where he's like everything's not so black and white of good and evil. Like he's gonna start seeing that. Maybe not. Maybe I'm just off base, but it will be really interesting to see. He's again becoming one of my favorites as well. If I had to pick like maybe my top five here would probably be Tenya and then Shoto. Yeah, and then probably Bakugo, Izuku, who's Deku, and Tokiyami. So those kind of five there are probably my top five in this kind of class of 20 that they have going on, and like just the characters so far. Eraserhead's obviously awesome, but I think these guys are kind of like outshining him at the moment, just in my interest about them. Because Eraserhead, I feel like a lot of his powers and everything were showcased already, and what he can do was showcased, and now he's there more of a supportive like kind of mentorship role, just like All Might is at this point. But yeah, hope you guys have a good one. This was really cool to do, and remember to stay plus ultra.